Embark on a journey through the tapestry of American history, where each chapter unfurls with tales of triumph, struggle, and the unyielding spirit of a nation. From the fiery forge of revolution to the seismic waves of the civil rights movement, this odyssey through the history of the United States unveils threads of resilience, innovation, and an unwavering pursuit of freedom that have defined a nation and ignited the world. Join us as we delve deep into the remarkable story of America, where every moment resonates with the promise of progress and the timeless quest for a more perfect union. Let's start with chapter number 1, Pre-colonial and Colonial America, before 1763. In this chapter, we will delve into the complex and multifaceted history of North America before and during early European colonization. We will explore the rich and diverse indigenous societies that thrived across the continent, the profound impact of European exploration and colonization, and the development of colonial life and economies. This comprehensive overview will provide a nuanced understanding of the cultural, social, and economic dynamics that shaped early America. Indigenous societies. To begin our exploration, we focus on the Native American cultures that existed long before European contact. These societies were not monolithic, but were characterized by a rich diversity of political, social, and economic systems. The Iroquois Confederacy, for instance, represents a sophisticated alliance of tribes that developed a democratic governance system, which allowed them to effectively manage internal affairs and external relations. This alliance was a remarkable example of political organization and cooperation among different groups. Moving westward, the Plains tribes, such as the Sioux and Cheyenne, led a nomadic lifestyle that revolved around buffalo hunting. Their social structures and spiritual practices were deeply connected to their environment and the animals they depended on. In contrast, the Pueblo peoples of the Southwest constructed complex adobe dwellings and developed advanced agricultural techniques to thrive in an arid landscape. Their societies were built on a foundation of communal living and spiritual beliefs that were intricately tied to their daily lives and governance structures. Agricultural practices varied widely among Native American societies, from the Three Sisters method of interplanting corn, beans, and squash to sophisticated irrigation systems in the Southwest. Extensive trade networks facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies across vast distances, connecting different tribes and fostering economic and cultural interactions. The spiritual beliefs and ceremonies of these societies were deeply interwoven with their daily lives, offering a window into their worldviews and values. European exploration and colonization. As we transition to the era of European exploration and colonization, we examine the major European powers involved in this transformative period: Spain, France, and England. The motivations behind their voyages were varied, ranging from the quest for wealth and resources to the spread of Christianity and the establishment of new territories. The Spanish, driven by these goals, established early settlements such as St. Augustine, which remains the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the continental United States. Their encounters with advanced indigenous civilizations like the Aztecs and Incas had profound and often devastating impacts on these societies. In the northern regions, the French focused on the fur trade and built alliances with indigenous tribes, leading to the establishment of settlements such as Quebec. Their relatively cooperative approach contrasted with the more aggressive strategies of the Spanish and English. The French settlers' interactions with Native American tribes fostered economic and cultural exchanges that significantly shaped the region. England's colonization efforts, marked by the establishment of Jamestown in 1607, were driven by economic aspirations and the search for new land. The early struggles and eventual survival of the Jamestown settlers highlight the critical role of Native American assistance and the cultivation of tobacco as a cash crop. The far-reaching consequences of the Columbian Exchange, which introduced new crops, animals, and diseases between the Old and New Worlds, will be explored for their profound impact on global history, colonial life, and economy. In the final section of this chapter, we immerse ourselves in the daily lives and economies of the colonial era. The development of colonial economies was heavily influenced by agriculture, with plantations in the southern colonies relying on cash crops such as tobacco, rice, and indigo. The labor systems that supported these economies, particularly the brutal institution of slavery, will be scrutinized to understand their lasting legacies and the human cost of economic development. Trade was a cornerstone of colonial life, with the triangular trade connecting the colonies to Europe and Africa, facilitating the exchange of goods, slaves, and raw materials. We will explore the economic interdependencies that emerged and their effects on both colonial and indigenous societies. Daily life in the colonies was marked by a mix of hardship and adaptation. Settlers faced numerous challenges, including harsh weather, disease, and conflicts with Native Americans. However, they also built communities with distinct cultural and social norms. The interactions between settlers and indigenous people ranged from cooperation and trade to conflict and displacement, highlighting the complexities and nuances of these relationships. By the end of this chapter, we will have gained a comprehensive understanding of the pre-colonial and colonial periods in North America. This journey through history will not only highlight the diverse cultures and societies that existed before European contact, but also the profound changes brought about by exploration, colonization, and the establishment of new economies and ways of life. This foundation will set the stage for examining the transformative events that followed, shaping the trajectory of American history. Chapter number 2. American Revolution, 1763 to 1783. In this chapter, we will delve into the critical period of American history known as the American Revolution, spanning from 1763 to 1783. This era witnessed the transformation of the 13 American colonies from British subjects to an independent nation. Our exploration will cover the causes of the revolution, the key figures and events that propelled the movement, and the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, leading up to the major battles that secured American independence. Causes of the Revolution. To understand the American Revolution, it is essential to examine the causes that ignited the colonial desire for independence. Central to this discussion is the impact of British taxation policies, which stirred widespread resentment among the colonists. The Stamp Act of 1765 imposed a direct tax on a wide array of paper goods, leading to a wave of protests and the formation of groups like the Sons of Liberty. This act was seen as a direct affront to the colonists' rights, as it was enacted without their consent or representation in the British Parliament. The phrase "no taxation without representation" became a rallying cry, encapsulating the colonists' demand for a say in their governance. Further exacerbating tensions were the Townshend Acts of 1767, which imposed duties on imported goods such as tea, glass, and paper. The revenue generated from these taxes was used to pay British officials in the colonies, thereby undermining the power of colonial assemblies. These acts not only strained the economic life of the colonies, but also highlighted the growing desire for self-governance and the ideological foundations of the revolutionary movement, rooted in Enlightenment principles of liberty, equality, and democracy. Key figures and events. The American Revolution was shaped by the contributions and leadership of pivotal figures whose actions galvanized the revolutionary cause. George Washington, as the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, played a crucial role in leading colonial forces against the British. His strategic acumen and perseverance were instrumental in securing key victories. Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, articulated the philosophical underpinnings of the revolution, emphasizing natural rights and the justification for independence. Benjamin Franklin, a diplomat and statesman, was vital in securing French support, which proved decisive in the later stages of the war. Significant events further propelled the revolutionary movement. The Boston Tea Party of 1773 was a direct response to the Tea Act, which granted the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. Colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded British ships and dumped an entire shipment of tea into Boston Harbor, symbolizing their resistance to British control. The battles of Lexington and Concord in 1775 marked the outbreak of armed conflict, with the shot heard round the world, signaling the start of the Revolution. The Continental Congresses, particularly the Second Continental Congress, served as the governing body that coordinated the colonial war effort and ultimately adopted the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence and War. The drafting and adoption of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 was a defining moment in American history. This document, primarily authored by Thomas Jefferson, articulated the colony's grievances against King George III and declared their right to self-governance. It was grounded in Enlightenment ideals, emphasizing that all men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration not only justified the break from Britain, but also provided a unifying vision for the new nation. The subsequent War for Independence saw numerous significant battles and strategic maneuvers that ultimately led to American victory. The Battle of Saratoga in 1777 was a turning point, as it resulted in a decisive American victory and convinced France to enter the war as an ally of the colonies. French military and financial support were crucial in sustaining the colonial war effort. The Battle of Yorktown in 1781 marked the final major conflict of the war, where General Washington's forces, with French assistance, successfully besieged British General Cornwallis's army, leading to his surrender. This victory effectively ended the war and paved the way for the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which formally recognized American independence. By the end of this chapter, we will have a comprehensive understanding of the American Revolution, from its causes and key figures to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence and the major battles that secured independence. This foundational knowledge will provide insight into the revolutionary spirit that shaped the birth of the United States and set the stage for the nation's subsequent development. Chapter number 3, Forming a New Nation, 1783 to 1815. In this chapter, we will explore the formative years of the United States, from the end of the Revolutionary War to the aftermath of the War of 1812. This period is marked by significant developments in the nation's governance and identity. We will begin with the initial attempts at creating a national framework through the Articles of Confederation, proceed to the pivotal Constitutional Convention that produced the U.S. Constitution, and then examine the early years of the Republic under the leadership of its first president, George Washington. Finally, we will delve into the War of 1812, a conflict that tested the young nation's resilience and helped shape its future. Constitutional development. To understand the evolution of the United States government, we start with the Articles of Confederation, the first governing document of the new nation. The Articles were crafted during the Revolutionary War and ratified in 1781. They established a confederation of sovereign states with a weak central government, reflecting the colonists' fear of tyranny. However, this framework soon revealed its weaknesses. The lack of a strong central authority made it difficult to enforce laws, regulate commerce, or raise revenue through taxes. The inability to address these issues led to significant challenges, including economic instability and the inability to maintain a standing army, which became evident during events like Shays' Rebellion. Recognizing the need for a more robust and effective national government, the Constitutional Convention was convened in Philadelphia in 1787. Delegates from the states gathered to draft a new constitution, resulting in intense debates over representation and the balance of powers. One of the most significant outcomes was the Great Compromise, which established a bicameral legislature with proportional representation in the House of Representatives and equal representation in the Senate. Another contentious issue was the Three-Fifths Compromise, which determined that 3/5 of the enslaved population would be counted for both taxation and representation. These compromises were crucial in shaping the structure of the U.S. government and ensuring the Constitution's ratification. Early Republic. As we transition to the early years of the Republic, George Washington's presidency set many important precedents. Elected as the first president in 1789, Washington's leadership established foundational practices and institutions. He formed the first presidential cabinet, including key figures such as Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, to advise him and assist in governing. The Judiciary Act of 1789, another significant achievement, established the federal judiciary system, including the Supreme Court. Washington's farewell address in 1796 provided guiding principles for the young nation, warning against political factions and foreign alliances, advice that would resonate throughout American history. The War of 1812, often called the Second War of Independence, was a pivotal event in the early Republic. The war stemmed from ongoing conflicts between the United States and Britain, including issues like the impressment of American sailors and restrictions on U.S. trade. The conflict saw key events such as the British burning of Washington, D.C. and the successful defense of Fort McHenry, which inspired the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner. The war ended with the Treaty of Ghent in 1814, which restored pre-war boundaries, but did not address the issues that caused the war. Despite this, the war fostered a sense of national identity and pride, as Americans celebrated their resilience and perceived victory. By the end of this chapter, we will have a comprehensive understanding of the foundational years of the United States. This journey through constitutional development, the establishment of early government precedents, and the challenges faced during the War of 1812 will illuminate how the nation navigated its early years and set the stage for its future growth and development. This period laid the groundwork for the political and social dynamics that would continue to evolve in the years to come. Chapter number 4. Expansion and Reform, 1815 to 1860. In this chapter, we will explore a dynamic period in American history characterized by rapid territorial expansion and significant social and political reform. From the concept of manifest destiny driving westward expansion to the transformative reform movements of the antebellum period, this era was pivotal in shaping the nation's identity and laying the groundwork for future developments. We will begin by examining the ideological and practical aspects of westward expansion, followed by an analysis of the major social, political, and economic changes that defined the antebellum period. Westward expansion. To understand the driving force behind America's territorial growth, we must first explore the concept of manifest destiny. This term, coined in the mid-19th century, encapsulated the belief that the United States was destined by divine providence to expand its territory across the entire North American continent. This ideology was fueled by a sense of American exceptionalism and a desire for economic opportunities, land, and the spread of democratic ideals. Manifest destiny not only justified expansion, but also framed it as a moral and inevitable mission. The period saw several key territorial acquisitions and conflicts that significantly reshaped the nation's landscape. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803, which doubled the size of the United States, was a monumental event that provided vast tracts of land for settlement and exploration. This acquisition was followed by the annexation of Texas in 1845, after the Texas Revolution against Mexico and the establishment of the independent Republic of Texas. The drive for expansion also led to conflicts with Native American tribes, who were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands through policies like the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This act resulted in the infamous Trail of Tears, a forced relocation of thousands of Native Americans, leading to immense suffering and death. Various Indian wars during this period further exemplified the violent clashes between the expanding United States and indigenous populations. These conflicts were marked by resistance from Native American tribes attempting to protect their lands and way of life against encroaching settlers and government policies. The impact of these events on Native American communities was profound, leading to significant loss of life, culture, and autonomy. Antebellum reforms. The antebellum period was also a time of profound social and political change, driven by various reform movements aimed at addressing the moral and societal issues of the day. Abolitionism emerged as a powerful movement seeking to end slavery in the United States. Prominent figures like Frederick Douglass, a former enslaved person turned eloquent advocate for freedom, and Harriet Tubman, known for her daring rescues via the Underground Railroad, played crucial roles in galvanizing public opinion against the institution of slavery. Women's rights also came to the forefront during this period, with leaders like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony spearheading the fight for women's suffrage and equality. The Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 marked a significant milestone, producing the Declaration of Sentiments that called for equal rights for women, including the right to vote. This document drew parallels to the Declaration of Independence, emphasizing the demand for justice and equality. The temperance movement sought to address the social problems associated with alcohol consumption, advocating for moderation or complete abstinence. This movement gained considerable support, particularly from women and religious groups, who viewed alcohol as a source of societal ills such as domestic violence and moral decay. Economic and technological changes during the Industrial Revolution also had a profound impact on American society. The rise of factories and mass production methods revolutionized the economy, leading to the growth of urban centers and the creation of new job opportunities. Innovations such as the cotton gin, invented by Eli Whitney, dramatically increased the efficiency of cotton processing and bolstered the Southern economy, but also entrenched the institution of slavery further. The development of railroads and the telegraph revolutionized transportation and communication, shrinking distances and fostering a more interconnected and rapidly developing nation. By the end of this chapter, we will have a comprehensive understanding of the significant events and movements that characterized the period of expansion and reform from 1815 to 1860. This exploration will illuminate how the ideology of manifest destiny drove westward expansion and how various reform movements sought to address the moral and social challenges of the era. The economic and technological advancements of the time will also be examined for their transformative effects on American society and economy, setting the stage for the tumultuous years leading up to the Civil War. Chapter number 5. Civil War and Reconstruction, 1861 to 1877. In this chapter, we will explore one of the most transformative periods in American history, spanning from the onset of the Civil War in 1861 to the end of Reconstruction in 1877. This era witnessed profound social, political, and economic upheaval as the nation grappled with the issues of slavery, states' rights, and the aftermath of war. We will begin by analyzing the root causes of the Civil War, followed by an examination of key events, major battles, and military strategies employed by both Union and Confederate forces. Finally, we will delve into the Reconstruction era, which sought to rebuild the nation and address the challenges of integrating newly freed African Americans into American society. Causes of the Civil War. The Civil War was fundamentally driven by the contentious issues of slavery and sectionalism, which had been escalating for decades. The economic dependence on slavery in the southern states clashed with the industrial and increasingly abolitionist sentiments of the North. The cultural and political differences between these regions were stark, with debates over states' rights versus federal authority intensifying. The Dred Scott decision of 1857, in which the Supreme Court ruled that African Americans were not citizens and could not sue in federal court, exacerbated tensions. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859 further inflamed the national debate over slavery, highlighting the growing divide between abolitionists and proponents of slavery. The election of Abraham Lincoln as president in 1860 on a platform opposing the expansion of slavery into new territories prompted several southern states to secede from the Union. By the time Lincoln took office in March 1861, 7 southern states had already declared their secession and formed the Confederate States of America. The Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in April 1861 marked the beginning of hostilities, plunging the nation into a devastating civil war that would last 4 years. Major battles and strategies. The Civil War saw numerous major battles and military campaigns that determined its outcome. The Battle of Gettysburg in July 1863 was a turning point, often considered the decisive battle of the war, where Union forces under General George Meade successfully repelled Confederate General Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North. The Battle of Antietam in September 1862 was another critical engagement, as it halted Lee's first invasion of the North and led to Lincoln's issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. Sherman's march to the sea in late 1864 further demonstrated the Union's strategy of total war, as General William T. Sherman led his forces through Georgia, devastating Confederate infrastructure and resources. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, issued in January 1863, was a significant turning point in the war effort. While it did not immediately free all enslaved individuals, it declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territory were henceforth free. This proclamation reshaped the war's purpose from preserving the Union to also include ending slavery, garnering international support for the Union cause and encouraging African Americans to join the fight against the Confederacy. Reconstruction era. Following the Civil War, the Reconstruction era aimed to rebuild the nation and address the social and political upheaval caused by slavery and war. The Reconstruction policies, implemented primarily under Presidents Lincoln and Johnson and later Congress, sought to reintegrate the Southern states into the Union, establish civil rights for freedmen, and reshape Southern society. The 13th Amendment, ratified in December 1865, abolished slavery throughout the United States, marking a significant legislative victory for the abolitionist cause. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves, and guaranteed equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, extended voting rights to African American men, though these rights would be systematically undermined by discriminatory practices such as poll taxes and literacy tests. However, Reconstruction faced significant challenges and ultimately fell short of its lofty goals. The period was marred by racial violence, economic turmoil, and political corruption. The Compromise of 1877, which resolved the disputed presidential election of 1876, effectively ended Reconstruction. In exchange for Southern support for Republican candidate Rutherford B. Hayes, federal troops were withdrawn from the South, marking the beginning of the Jim Crow era and the rollback of African American civil rights. By the end of this chapter, we will have examined the causes, major events, and consequences of the Civil War, as well as the complexities of the Reconstruction era. This period of upheaval and transformation laid the groundwork for the modern United States, shaping its identity, political landscape, and ongoing struggles with issues of race, equality, and justice. Chapter number 6. Industrialization and Progressive Era, 1877 to 1914. In Chapter 6, we explore the transformative period of industrialization and the Progressive Era in America, spanning from 1877 to 1914. This era witnessed profound shifts in the nation's economic, social, and political landscape, shaped by rapid industrial growth, social inequalities, and progressive reforms aimed at addressing these challenges. Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, characterized by rapid economic growth and stark social contrasts, saw the rise of industrial giants who reshaped the American economy. Figures like John D. Rockefeller, through Standard Oil, and Andrew Carnegie, in steel production, amassed immense wealth and power, contributing to the concentration of wealth among a few while many workers endured harsh conditions and low wages. The era's gilded facade masked underlying social tensions as disparities between rich and poor grew more pronounced, laying the groundwork for labor unrest and calls for reform. Industrialization not only transformed the economic landscape but also reshaped American society. Urbanization accelerated as rural populations migrated to cities in search of industrial jobs, leading to overcrowded urban centers and inadequate housing conditions. The influx of immigrants from Europe and Asia fueled the labor force, yet these newcomers faced discrimination and exploitation in the workplace, exacerbating social tensions. Labor movement. Amidst the industrial boom, the labor movement emerged as a powerful force advocating for workers' rights and improved conditions. Labor unions such as the American Federation of Labor, AFL, organized strikes and protests to demand fair wages, safer working conditions, and an end to child labor. The Haymarket Riot of 1886 and the Pullman Strike of 1894 were pivotal moments where tensions between labor and management erupted into violence, highlighting the struggle for economic justice and worker solidarity in the face of industrialization's harsh realities. Labor activism led to significant legislative reforms aimed at improving working conditions and protecting workers' rights. The establishment of the Department of Labor in 1913 under President Taft underscored the federal government's growing role in mediating labor disputes and promoting fair labor practices. These efforts marked a turning point in American labor history, paving the way for future labor reforms and the establishment of rights for workers across various industries. Progressive reforms. The Progressive Era marked a period of social and political reform aimed at addressing the excesses and inequalities of the Gilded Age. Leaders like Theodore Roosevelt championed progressive ideals of social justice and government intervention to regulate big business and protect consumers. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 aimed to curb monopolistic practices, while the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 aimed to ensure the safety of consumer products. Social reformers like Jane Addams, through settlement houses like Hull House, worked to alleviate poverty and improve living conditions for the urban poor, emphasizing education, healthcare, and social services as means of upliftment. Progressive reforms extended beyond economic regulation to encompass social justice issues such as women's suffrage and civil rights. The ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920 granted women the right to vote, marking a significant victory for the women's suffrage movement and expanding democratic participation. Efforts to address racial discrimination gained momentum through organizations like the NAACP, which fought against segregation and lobbied for anti-lynching legislation, laying the groundwork for future civil rights advancements in the 20th century. Efforts to address social injustices. Progressives targeted various social injustices exacerbated by industrialization, including urban poverty, political corruption, and the exploitation of workers. Reformers pushed for legislative changes and grassroots activism to enact labor protections, women's suffrage, and improve public health standards. Efforts to combat child labor gained momentum, leading to laws restricting employment of minors and improving educational opportunities. Social movements like the temperance movement sought to address societal ills through moral reform, advocating for prohibition as a means to curb social problems associated with alcohol abuse. The Progressive Era also saw the rise of educational reforms aimed at expanding access to schooling and improving educational standards. Leaders such as John Dewey promoted progressive education principles that emphasized experiential learning, critical thinking, and civic engagement, laying the foundation for modern educational practices. These reforms aim to empower individuals through knowledge and skills, fostering social mobility and contributing to the development of a more informed and participatory citizenry. In this chapter, we explore how industrialization and the Progressive Era reshaped America, laying the foundation for modern economic practices, labor rights, and social reforms. This period's legacy is marked by both the achievements and challenges faced in balancing industrial growth with social justice, setting the stage for ongoing debates on economic regulation, labor rights, and the role of government in promoting equity and opportunity for all citizens. Chapter number 7. World War I and the Roaring Twenties, 1914 to 1929. In this chapter, we explore a pivotal period in American history, encompassing World War I and the transformative Roaring Twenties, spanning from the outbreak of World War I in 1914 to the end of the decade marked by economic prosperity and cultural dynamism. This era reshaped American society and its global influence. We begin by examining the causes of World War I, the reasons for U.S. involvement starting in 1917, and the significant battles involving American forces. Following this, we analyze the Treaty of Versailles and its profound impact on international relations, including the formation of the League of Nations and the treaty's long-term consequences. World War I. World War I erupted in 1914 due to a complex web of geopolitical tensions, military alliances, and nationalistic fervor across Europe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in Sarajevo triggered a chain reaction leading to widespread conflict. The United States initially remained neutral, but was drawn into the war in 1917 primarily due to unrestricted submarine warfare by Germany, which resulted in the sinking of American ships and loss of civilian lives. American forces played pivotal roles in battles such as the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, contributing significantly to the Allied victory. The war had profound implications for American society, catalyzing economic growth through wartime production and reshaping global power dynamics as the U.S. emerged as a major world player. Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, formally ended World War I and imposed harsh penalties on Germany. It included territorial losses, military restrictions, and reparations payments, reflecting the Allies' desire to prevent future aggression, but also contributing to German resentment and economic instability. The treaty established the League of Nations, aimed at promoting international cooperation and preventing future conflicts. However, the U.S. Senate's refusal to ratify the treaty and join the League limited its effectiveness and underscored America's evolving role in global diplomacy. Roaring Twenties. The 1920s, often referred to as the Roaring Twenties, marked a period of significant economic prosperity and cultural change in the United States. Rapid industrialization and technological advancements fueled economic growth, leading to a consumer boom characterized by increased mass production, advertising, and consumer spending. The automobile industry flourished, transforming transportation and urban development. Social norms underwent profound shifts, with the rise of a more liberated youth culture, the women's suffrage movement gaining momentum, and significant migration from rural areas to cities. Prohibition and the Harlem Renaissance. Prohibition, enacted with the 18th Amendment in 1920, banned the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages across the United States. While intended to promote social reform and reduce crime, prohibition instead led to widespread illegal drinking establishments and organized crime syndicates. Concurrently, the Harlem Renaissance emerged as a cultural movement in Harlem, New York, celebrating African American art, literature, music, and intellectual achievements. Artists like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Duke Ellington contributed to a vibrant cultural renaissance that challenged racial stereotypes and promoted pride in African American heritage. By exploring these pivotal moments in Chapter 7, we gain insights into how World War I and the Roaring Twenties shaped modern America, influencing its global role, economic landscape, cultural identity, and ongoing social transformations. These decades set the stage for further developments and challenges in the 20th century, reflecting the complexities of progress, conflict, and cultural diversity in American history. Chapter number 8. The Great Depression and World War II, 1929 to 1945. In this chapter, we delve into two defining periods of the 20th century, the Great Depression and World War II, spanning from the economic collapse of 1929 to the conclusion of the war in 1945. These tumultuous years reshaped global politics, economics, and society, leaving a lasting impact on the United States and the world at large. The Great Depression. The Great Depression, triggered by the stock market crash of 1929, marked a profound economic downturn characterized by widespread unemployment, business failures, and severe hardship for millions. The crash exposed weaknesses in the financial system and sparked a domino effect that devastated economies worldwide. Unemployment soared to unprecedented levels, reaching nearly 25% in the United States by 1933. Families faced homelessness, hunger, and despair as the social fabric strained under economic strain. The Depression led to deep soul-searching about capitalism and spurred significant reforms. New Deal programs. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal initiatives aimed to alleviate the effects of the Great Depression and stimulate economic recovery. The New Deal introduced a series of relief, recovery, and reform measures, including the establishment of public works projects like the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, which employed millions in conservation work, and the Social Security Act, providing financial support for the elderly and unemployed. These programs aim to restore confidence in the economy, regulate banking practices, and provide a safety net for the most vulnerable. World War II. U.S. involvement in World War II began with the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan on December 7, 1941, drawing the United States into a global conflict already raging in Europe and Asia. The war effort mobilized the American economy and society on an unprecedented scale. Key battles such as D-Day in 1944, the invasion of Normandy, marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany in Europe, while the Battle of Midway in the Pacific turned the tide against Japan. The home front saw massive industrial production, rationing, and societal changes as women entered the workforce in large numbers. Holocaust and atomic bomb. The Holocaust stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history, where 6 million Jews and millions of others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime were systematically exterminated. This genocide reshaped global perceptions of human rights and sparked international efforts to prevent such atrocities in the future. The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, while hastening the end of World War II, raised profound ethical questions about the use of nuclear weapons and their long-term consequences on warfare and global security. By examining these pivotal moments in Chapter 8, we gain insights into how the Great Depression and World War II shaped modern America and the world. These events not only tested the resilience of nations but also reshaped political ideologies, international alliances, and societal norms, leaving a legacy that continues to influence global affairs today. Chapter number 9. Post-War America, 1945 to 1960. In Chapter 9, we explore the transformative period of post-war America, spanning from the end of World War II in 1945 to the dawn of a new era in the 1960s. This era was marked by profound social, political, and economic changes that shaped the modern United States and its role on the world stage. Cold War and containment. The Cold War emerged as a geopolitical and ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, beginning in the aftermath of World War II. The origins of the Cold War can be traced to conflicting ideologies: democracy and capitalism versus communism, heightened by distrust and competition for global influence. The U.S. policy of containment aimed to prevent the spread of communism, leading to interventions in Korea and Vietnam. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, exemplified America's commitment to containing communist expansion in East Asia, resulting in a stalemate, but solidifying the division of North and South Korea along ideological lines. Similarly, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, as the U.S. and Soviet Union engaged in a tense standoff over Soviet nuclear missiles stationed in Cuba, resolved only through diplomacy and negotiation. McCarthyism and Red Scare. Domestically, The Cold War fueled a climate of fear and suspicion known as the Red Scare. Senator Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist crusade, known as McCarthyism, swept through American society in the early 1950s, accusing numerous individuals of communist sympathies without substantial evidence. The Red Scare led to government investigations, blacklisting of suspected communists from employment, and infringements on civil liberties in the name of national security, highlighting the anxieties and tensions of the era. The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, conducted high-profile hearings targeting Hollywood figures, intellectuals, and government officials, contributing to a climate of fear and censorship. Economic prosperity and social change. Post-World War II America experienced unprecedented economic prosperity, fueled by industrial expansion, technological innovation, and a booming consumer culture. The GI Bill provided educational opportunities and home loans to returning veterans, contributing to the growth of the middle class and suburbanization. The development of highways and affordable automobiles facilitated suburban growth, transforming the landscape and social dynamics of American cities. The era also witnessed a cultural shift towards consumerism, as advertising and mass media promoted a lifestyle centered around material wealth and consumption. The rise of television as a mass medium further shaped American culture, fostering national identity and influencing social norms and values. Civil rights movement. The civil rights movement emerged as a powerful social force seeking to dismantle racial segregation and discrimination in America. Landmark events such as the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision, which declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional, and the 1955 to 1956 Montgomery bus boycott, led by Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr., symbolized the early stages of the struggle for racial equality. These events galvanized a movement that would grow in strength and scope throughout the decade, paving the way for the broader Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965. The civil rights movement was a catalyst for social change, inspiring activism among African Americans and allies across the nation, challenging institutionalized racism and advocating for equal rights under the law. By examining these themes in Chapter 9, we gain insights into how post-war America navigated the challenges of global rivalry, domestic paranoia, economic prosperity, and social change. This period laid the groundwork for the cultural, political, and social transformations that defined the latter half of the 20th century, shaping the identity and trajectory of the United States into the modern era. Chapter number 10. The 1960s and 1970s. In Chapter 10, we delve into the transformative decades of the 1960s and 1970s in America, characterized by profound social, political, and cultural shifts that continue to shape the nation today. Civil rights movement. The civil rights movement of the 1960s was a watershed moment in American history, marked by a fervent struggle against racial segregation and discrimination. Key events such as the March on Washington in 1963, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, highlighted the movement's call for equality and justice. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 represented a legislative victory, outlawing racial segregation in public places and prohibiting employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Figures like Martin Luther King Jr., who advocated nonviolent resistance, and Malcolm X, who emphasized self-defense and empowerment, became central to the movement's diverse approaches and goals. The movement's impact extended beyond legal reforms, fostering a broader awareness of systemic racism and laying the groundwork for future activism and policy changes. Women's rights and other movements. The 1960s and 1970s also witnessed the rise of the women's liberation movement, challenging traditional gender roles and advocating for equal rights and opportunities. The movement fought for reproductive rights, workplace equality, and an end to gender-based discrimination. Simultaneously, Other social justice movements gained momentum, including the fight for LGBTQ+ rights and environmental activism. These movements broadened the scope of activism in America, addressing issues of identity, equality, and environmental sustainability. The women's liberation movement, in particular, led to significant legislative gains such as the passage of Title IX in 1972, which prohibited sex discrimination in federally funded education programs, and the legalization of abortion with the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision in 1973, marking milestones in the ongoing struggle for gender equality. Vietnam War and social unrest. The Vietnam War was a defining issue of the era, characterized by U.S. military involvement in Southeast Asia from the early 1960s to the mid-1970s. The war escalated tensions within American society as opposition grew due to its perceived injustices and the heavy toll it exacted on both American and Vietnamese lives. Key battles such as the Tet Offensive in 1968 and the fall of Saigon in 1975 underscored the conflict's intensity and its impact on global geopolitics. Domestically, the war fueled widespread protest and social unrest, with anti-war demonstrations becoming a significant feature of American political discourse. The war's legacy included a deep questioning of U.S. foreign policy, the draft system, and the role of the military-industrial complex in American governance, influencing subsequent generations' views on war and diplomacy. Counterculture and political change. The 1960s and 1970s were also characterized by the emergence of a counterculture movement that challenged mainstream values and norms. Influenced by youth disillusionment with societal structures, the counterculture embraced alternative lifestyles, experimental art forms, and new forms of political expression. This cultural shift had profound implications for politics, contributing to movements for civil rights, women's liberation, environmental protection, and opposition to the Vietnam War. Political change was evident in the passage of legislation such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the establishment of environmental protection laws, reflecting the era's commitment to social justice and reform. The counterculture's impact extended beyond the cultural sphere, influencing electoral politics and public policy debates, fostering a legacy of activism and social change that continues to resonate in American society. In Chapter 10, we examine how these interconnected themes, the civil rights movement, women's liberation, and other social justice movements, the Vietnam War and social unrest, and the counterculture's impact on political change, defined the dynamic and turbulent 1960s and 1970s in America. These decades laid the groundwork for ongoing debates and progress in areas of civil rights, social justice, and the role of activism in shaping American society. The legacy of these movements continues to shape contemporary discussions on issues of race, gender, war, and political reform, highlighting the enduring impact of the 1960s and 1970s on the American cultural and political landscape. Chapter number 11. Contemporary America, 1980 present. In Chapter 11, we delve into the multifaceted era of contemporary America, spanning from 1980 to the present day, marked by profound political, economic, and social transformations that have redefined the nation's trajectory and global role. Reagan era and economic policies. The Reagan administration's economic policies, known as Reaganomics, aimed to stimulate economic growth through tax cuts, deregulation, and reduce government spending. Supply-side economics, a cornerstone of Reaganomics, posited that lowering taxes on the wealthy and corporations would spur investment, job creation, and overall prosperity. This approach led to a period of economic expansion characterized by lower inflation and sustained GDP growth, albeit with increasing income inequality. Reagan's strategic stance during the Cold War, advocating for a strong military buildup and diplomatic negotiations, contributed to the eventual thawing of tensions with the Soviet Union, symbolized by initiatives like arms reduction treaties and the dissolution of the Soviet bloc. Technology and globalization. The proliferation of the Internet in the late 20th century revolutionized communication, commerce, and social interaction on a global scale. The digital revolution facilitated the rapid exchange of information, the growth of e-commerce, and the emergence of social media platforms that transformed how people connect and share ideas. Globalization accelerated as trade barriers diminished. Multinational corporations expanded operations across borders, and cultural exchanges flourished. The knowledge-based economy emerged, emphasizing innovation, research, and intellectual capital as drivers of economic growth. This shift reshaped industries such as information technology, biotechnology, and telecommunications, positioning the United States as a leader in technological innovation and digital entrepreneurship. 21st century challenges. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 fundamentally altered American foreign policy and national security strategies. The coordinated attacks by Al-Qaeda on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon prompted a swift and robust response from the United States, leading to the War on Terror. Military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq aimed to dismantle terrorist networks and promote stability in the region, although they sparked debates over the efficacy of military interventionism and the long-term consequences of regime change. Domestically, 9/11 events precipitated heightened security measures, including the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security and the enactment of the USAPTRIOT Act, which expanded surveillance capabilities and raised concerns about civil liberties and privacy rights. The 2008 financial crisis exposed systemic weaknesses in the global financial system, rooted in risky lending practices, speculative investments, and inadequate regulatory oversight. The collapse of major financial institutions, such as Lehman Brothers, triggered a severe recession characterized by skyrocketing unemployment rates, widespread home foreclosures, and a precipitous decline in consumer confidence. Government responses, including the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, and stimulus measures, aimed to stabilize financial markets and restore economic growth. The crisis spurred public outrage and protests, including the Occupy Wall Street movement, which highlighted growing inequality, corporate greed, and the need for financial reform to safeguard against future economic downturns. Contemporary America grapples with ongoing challenges that shape its political landscape and societal dynamics. Climate change has emerged as a critical issue, prompting debates over environmental policies, sustainable energy solutions, and global cooperation to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. Immigration remains a contentious topic, fueling debates over border security, immigration reform, and the rights of undocumented immigrants. Social movements such as Black Lives Matter have mobilized nationwide protests and advocacy efforts against systemic racism and police brutality, calling for reforms to address racial inequality and promote social justice. In Chapter 11, we examine how contemporary America navigates these complex challenges and opportunities, exploring the intersections of politics, economics, technology, and social movements that define the nation's contemporary identity and global engagement. This era's complexities underscore the ongoing evolution of American society and its responses to domestic and international pressures, shaping the future trajectory of governance, equality, and global leadership. In concluding this comprehensive guide, we reflect on the major themes and events that have shaped the United States, examining its evolving identity and contemplating future prospects. Throughout its history, America has been defined by foundational ideals such as democracy, liberty, and equality, which have both inspired progress and posed enduring challenges. From the struggles for independence and the expansion across a continent to the Civil War's profound reckoning with slavery and the civil rights movement's quest for racial justice, America's story is one of resilience and transformation. The guide has explored pivotal moments such as the Founding Fathers' vision for a democratic republic, the Industrial Revolution's economic upheaval, and the global conflicts that tested America's role as a world leader. It has highlighted the contributions of diverse communities, including immigrants seeking opportunity and civil rights activists demanding equality. Each chapter has delved into the complexities of American society, from the bustling urban centers to the vast expanses of rural America, showcasing a nation shaped by innovation, diversity, and perseverance. Looking forward, America faces new challenges in navigating the complexities of a globalized world, addressing systemic inequalities, and preserving democratic institutions amidst political polarization. The guide has underscored the importance of understanding history's lessons in shaping informed decisions and fostering national unity. As America continues to evolve, its commitment to upholding the principles of justice, opportunity, and individual rights will be crucial in defining its future trajectory. This comprehensive guide aims to provide readers with a nuanced understanding of America's past, present, and future. By examining the interconnectedness of historical events, social movements, and cultural shifts, it invites reflection on the nation's identity and the ongoing pursuit of a more perfect union. As we conclude, we recognize that America's story is not static but dynamic, continually shaped by the aspirations and actions of its people. By embracing its complexities and celebrating its achievements, we honor the enduring spirit that defines the American experience.